Hello, everybody. Welcome to the program here. We have, so you're about to graduate college, installment 2. How are you guys all doing today?
Doing good.
Awesome.
Good. So fun little announcements before we bring our industry veteran, Brian Morrow, on. We are going to be going live every 2 weeks at this time, Friday, 12 o'clock Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We think it's really beneficial to stay in touch with all those folks out there during these uncertain times. That is our current plan right now, is to go live with content that is very much geared towards those who are students, who are about to graduate, who just graduated, and are facing uncertain times. My name is Patrick Kling. I'm an art director with Nickelodeon. I've been in themed entertainment for 8 years, and I've been in theme park just operations since I was 14. Let's take it over to Dave. Dave, who are you?
I'm Dave. My background's in mechanical engineering. I graduated a few years ago, and for the last year moved down to Orlando and have been working as a BIM manager, Revit modeler. And I'm new to the industry, but have been in it and around it for a few weeks now, or for a few months now. I started the themedentertainmentjobs.com and the Edge Slice group.
Great. Kelly, how about you? Who are you? What are you doing here?
Oh, that's such a great question. My name is Kelly Daly. I am the oldest baby in themed entertainment. I have recently started a career in themed entertainment after 12 years of teaching art in public schools in Florida. And my degree now is going to be an MFA from SCAD in themed entertainment design. Woo, go bees. And I'm currently working as an intern, a creative design intern at Universal Creative for the resort development hotels team. I'm a graphic designer.
Cool. So before we get underway, I want to make a couple more announcements. So this is a bit new. Last week, I think we streamed, or a few weeks ago, I guess it was 3 weeks ago, we streamed off of my own personal Facebook and then YouTube. Right now, we have about even split. People are watching on Facebook and they're watching on YouTube. That's perfect. We're going to keep streaming at the same spot on YouTube, but we did create a Facebook page where we're going to have current updates. We'd love for you guys to find us on Facebook. Just type in @AboutToGraduate. Find our page, like us, so that we don't have to keep inviting you guys over and over again. I just want you guys to be there. Mark it on your calendars every 2 weeks. We have a great guest coming up next week. We'll get into more about that later. But without further ado, I do want to bring on one Brian. That's not the Brian we're here to see, but Brian over here. He's working the control room. Very happy to have Brian. He's not in this industry whatsoever, but he's directing the show from behind the scenes. We appreciate this Brian who's doing that because it makes it's a lot easier. But let's go ahead and bring on the real Brian you're here to see. And that would be Brian Morrow, everybody.
And apparently the other Brian and me are having a floral shirt competition today. Maybe winning.
Yeah, wish I would have known.
So we have a pretty great structure we have that we're going to do today. And we're going to meet myself, just to give you a full disclosure, myself, I'm going to take the first segment, then we're going to toss it over to Kelly, and then Dave is going to also take on another segment. We have great categories to try to cover all sorts of different things to extract information from Brian Morrow. So to get things started, Brian, go ahead and tell us a little about yourself.
Well, first, I was a little dismayed when you said industry veteran.
We're badge of honor.
I feel like I'm 90 or something. It wasn't that long ago that I was on the other side of this live stream before there were live streams, trying to figure out how to get into the industry. So we can talk more about that later if you want. It's an interesting story. But yeah, so I'm Brian, guys. Those that don't know me, you may know me from my work at Busch Gardens and SeaWorld and Discovery Cove. Back in the day, I ran that development team for attraction development. And back in 2017, I made the decision to leave in December 2017 and officially launch my new company around February of 2018. And so we're a little studio not too small anymore, or a decent sized studio, I like to think, the right size, in Orlando, Florida, where we particularly are working on all types of industries, including theme parks, but also some other unusual things that I think could be useful knowledge for this group to hear from, as well, as we pivoted and shifted in the new chrono industry that we're in right now.
Why don't we hear that? Let's hear your story about getting in the industry. People, the audience that we're targeting are people that want to be in the industry, want to become our students, our recent graduates, all that kind of good stuff. I know it's different now than it was today, but I love hearing these stories. So let's hear it.
Yeah, I think it's an important one, because I think you're going to have to implement some of the things that I had to do to get in. So I knew I wanted to be in this industry since I was probably around 11 or 12. And this is back when there was no, imagine it, people, internet or YouTube or Facebook didn't exist. So finding out information about how to get jobs in the industry required going to a library and looking through magazine articles and books and et cetera, et cetera. So I figured it all out that way, very old school. I'm only 46. I know I'm saying things that make me sound like I'm like 2,000 years old, but back in the day, that's how you did it. So, and I went to college and got a degree in engineering because I thought I wanted to design roller coasters, was actually what I thought I wanted to do. And then realized throughout college, kind of playing in architecture design and engineering design, landed on engineering, that it wasn't just the coasters I liked, it was the entire placemaking and the overall attraction and experience that I really wanted to get into. There was no SCAD. There was no theme park anything. There was Ringling School of Fine Arts, maybe. I don't even know if it was back in the 90s, if that existed. But you know, these jobs weren't a thing. Everybody knew who Disney was, and nobody cared who anybody else was back then. The industry was much smaller than it is today. So I actually went to my college program and said, okay, I'm ready for my intern engineering guidance counselor. And he goes, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'm going to work in the theme park industry and design theme parks. And he laughed at me and told me there's no jobs there for me, and that was a dead end choice, and was really obviously not very encouraging. So as a good patron of Auburn University, I took the job they assigned me to, which was industrial washing machine manufacturing. And in some terrible little town in the panhandle of Florida, which everyone knows is not really Florida. So I fit in really, really well. But you know what? I did it. It was fine. I did the job. I liked building things. It was all cool. And then came back and said, well, if my counselor's not going to help me, I'm going to help myself. And here's where the advice matters probably to everybody here. You have to help yourself. No one's going to give or hand you anything at this point in time, much less back when I was trying to get out of college, get a job. So I left school. Every 3 quarters, I would leave school on my own, just drop out and go get my own job in the theme parks. And my first job was for Six Flags Astro World in Texas, which was in Houston. And I was a food safety intern. And I didn't care, because I got there, I got my boots on the ground, and within about 4 or 5 weeks, I figured out who was doing design work for them. And that's when the very next time I went back, I was actually in the design department, sorting drawings. So I was a college, soon-to-be graduate in engineering, and my job was cleaning the plan room. And back then, plans were drawn by hand and some computer work. And then that led to actually laying out queue lines and things like that, et cetera, et cetera. So I graduated. I was going to go work at Six Flags. Had this great job lined up in Texas to work for Six Flags in the design department, and they got bought. And so the job went away. They got bought by Premier Parks. The job went away. So I was graduating in 4 weeks with no job and didn't know what to do. So I got in my car, and I said, they're building a lot of cool stuff in Orlando. So I got in my car from Alabama, drove to Orlando, and I drove around the, those big, they take the Animal Kingdom had all their construction trailers for all the contractors in the parking lot of Animal Kingdom. It was built first. And so I just kind of went in like I was a contractor looking for a job, and knocked on doors of general contractors. I said, well, if I can't work for the operators, I'll work for the people building them, because I want my feet on the ground. And that's where it started. I got this amazing job with PCL Construction as a creative field engineer for Animal Kingdom Asia. I was there for 3 years building that. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and eventually managed to get myself into the owner side, which is where I wanted to be for a while. So there's the story. Get in your car and figure it out.
Yeah. I just drove to Orlando, so I didn't go and knock on doors in construction buildings, but that's great. So, you just touched on it, where you've been the contractor, you've been on the operations side, and you've also been on the owner side at SeaWorld, and now you've started your own firm. One thing that's interesting is people know all about Disney and Universal. They all know what WDI is, and they all know about Universal Creative. But we would love to share your perspective on what the difference is between being the owner operator and then starting your own firm, and what's that like. Can you shed some light on that magical world?
Yeah, they're very different experiences. So, and I know there's what I've kind of come to determine is working for the owner is really fascinating because you're on the inside. You get exposed to a lot of the business knowledge of building and operating and what's the right money to spend on an attraction. Working at SeaWorld was very unique for me because it's a smaller organization with 12 parks. We built like $300-something million of attractions every single year. So we did a lot of volume of work. But what was nice is it was highly diversified. So at no point in time was I ever just doing a project. We still had like 2 or 3 year project life cycles, or 2 years was kind of typical for us. We'd go very fast, but it allowed me the chance to do an enormous amount of kinds of projects, from food service to animals, obviously rides, et cetera, and shows. So it was a really great opportunity for me to get kind of my fingers into all things. And because that organization is smaller, our corporate office was in one building. I could go to the 4th floor and talk to retail and get their inputs, and go to finance and get their inputs, and go to operations and so it was a very easy way to move projects very quickly because it was such a small organization in comparison to what you would see at Disney and Universal, which is a very large organization. So I like the choice I made. I actually interviewed. I actually worked for the zoo in Tampa for a while, which was a great experience. And then jobs started opening up in the new renaissance of what was going to become the beginning of the golden era, which were actually just left in the theme park world, which was pre-Harry Potter at Universal. And I was interviewing for a job. I didn't know what the project was at Universal Creative, and it was for the first phase of Potter over at Islands. And then at the same time, a job at SeaWorld Orlando popped up, and I said, well, I'm coming to Orlando, I might as well interview for both. And so I did, and I took the SeaWorld job because of the diversity, and I really have this affinity to animals. So the subject matter was a little bit more interesting to me as well. So that's why I took it. Now on my own, what I've learned on my own is it accomplished exactly what I wanted it to do, which was twofold. I wanted to be able to execute work without the backbone of a large organization behind me. Prove that I could, and that my team is good, and we know how to manage these things and get this work done. And then number 2 was a diversification of experience. So now, instead of I did a lot at SeaWorld, but there's still only so much stuff that they do, and so now my path is much wider. Because we do theme park work. Now we do resort. We do a lot of resort work, which is amazing as it's blending with themed entertainment and immersion experiences. And now we do a fair amount of live event work, which I find fascinating. We did an ice show of all things. I mean, it's fantastic. And they said, "Can you do an ice show?" I'm like, "Sure, do an ice show." And I literally Googled ice show vendor and figured it out, right? And hired ice skaters. But it's been fantastic on that regards. And then the last thing I'll say is what I found, is that in this business, there's all types of people. There's designers, and there's creative folks, and there's writers. There's a lot of producers and project managers, which is a real job. That's actually what I consider myself. And then and there's just all these things you can do. And what I love about having my own company is that I realized I actually like running a company. I don't do a lot of design. I hire good people and let them do their work, and I get us on the right path of travel, and I manage the process, but I let my talent do the work for us because they're capable and they want to do it. But I love running a company. It's been really fascinating to the simple idea that people will write me a contract, we will do work, and they will give us money. and then I give that money to everybody else. I find it fascinating. It's just this iconic, this capitalism is so exciting, right? So so there's a long story to the organization. Yeah.
We do have a question from Kenneth. Brian, do you like working for the parks or private contractors more? So maybe going public, or a big park, or working maybe for a smaller firm. What do you think?
We like so. I wouldn't use the word private contractors. I just say you have the big theme park operators, which we do work for, which I do enjoy because I like the big projects. But that probably represents 20% of our business, and it could represent 80% of our business. But if we did that, we wouldn't be able to do other things. And so we like being a very small part of a very big project team on a big theme park project because it's exciting. But then we also like being the only people on a smaller project for another organization. So it's just choices. And there's money differences between the two, and there's experiences difference between the two. But most importantly, there's growth differences between the two. So we grow more as an organization, and I grow more as a business owner when we work for the smaller groups, because I know how to. I work for a big organization, so I understand how those things function. But the smaller ones are where we provide a lot more value, and we stretch way beyond what I thought we would ever be doing, which is fantastic. Yeah,
that's great. So I have one final question, and before we move on to others, to kind of tee things up, freelancing is a thing that exists in the industry, and there may be a lot of students here who will be entering that freelancing field. And before I tee up this question, I want to let everybody know that we have a wonderful guest that's going to come on in 2 weeks from today. It is Melody. Oops. It is, hold on a second. Melody coming on first. And it's going to be fantastic. At 12 o'clock, she's an attraction designer extraordinaire. I've worked with her before at different roles that I've been in. And we're going to talk all about freelancing. And so for those of you that don't know what that is or are a little scared, which is a lot of you, I've freelanced in my life. I've been a contractor my entire life, basically, almost my entire life. And we're going to dive deep into that next week. So mark your calendars, May 1st at 12 o'clock, please. I know, Brian, you can speak of how amazing Melody is. But yeah. My question is, you hire freelancers extensively. So during your time as an owner, I know you did that because I was one of them. And then you also hire people now as a vendor. Should they be prepared? Should students be prepared to become a freelancer? I kind of think so, but you want to expand on that, and how is it scary? All that kind of stuff. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah. So number one, all students need to be prepared to enter the job market in a way that they weren't imagining. Because the market is not the market you were imagining would exist, right? These are very simple scale and balance, market and demand, supply and demand, right? So the demand has changed. The demand isn't defined right now. It got thrown in the air. So think of the scale, right? It was like market and supply before the virus. There was much more demand than supply. So it was easy to get work. It wasn't difficult. You just had to be qualified and able and a generally good person to get projects, full-time jobs, contract jobs, anything. It didn't matter. And in one day, March 12th is when it flipped, is when that scale literally went, and it didn't just rebalance. It went so fast that it had all this velocity, and all that demand went up in the air, right? Yeah. And it's still there. It hasn't come back down, right? And so it's starting to kind of sprinkle down a little bit. Every week it gets better and better and better, but I don't think that will solidify those particulates aren't going to solidify down for probably another 2 to 3 weeks. And I think it's really going to be anchored to, once you start seeing stuff open, whatever that means, that demand will start to sort of fall down much quicker. So it's still up in the air. Don't bother trying to catch it. You're going to make yourself crazy. I don't bother to try to catch it as a business owner because it'll make myself nuts. I can't chase 8,000 particulates at one time, but they're starting to float down, and different ones are floating down than I typically would be doing, but that's okay because the market has changed. So be prepared for change. Relating to full-time versus contract, I think in the last, Melody Matheny figured this out how old is Slice now, Patrick? 10 years, 12? I don't even know how old it is. Whatever. It's now embedded in our culture. Oh, there she is. Look at her.
Finally, we have her.
There she is. There she is. So Melody figured this all out as an independent freelancer for herself, that they needed a place that they could kind of feel like they had a home base. And you're not individuals, you're working as a team. So she created Slice. Anybody listening to my voice and anybody listening to Melody's voice next week, you need to go to Slice Network and register immediately. And as a student, there's a place for students to register as novices or up and coming, and there's a place for very advanced people that have skills, et cetera, to register. And I believe it's all free right now. She waived all membership fees. So there's no reason for you not to be doing that. Like after this call, you need to be like online doing that immediately. What that does is it puts you amongst your peers. So you're no longer afraid. And that's a lot of people think in contracting and freelancing, like, oh, I'm alone, I'm afraid. I felt it too when I went on my own. When I said I went on my own, it was me and like myself in my house, which I'm in right now, in my office. So I did that as myself. I didn't open my doors with a staff of 7 and a freelance pool of 14. I opened with me, and let's just see how this goes. So I understand it's scary. Oh, there goes Slice and Melody. Is that Melody listening in?
Oh, yeah.
Or one of the board members, probably. So it's a place for you not to be alone, which is important, and resources and peer groups that you can contact. But it's also the place that folks come to get the talent. We go to Slice constantly. I mean, we're some sort of super special sponsorship level. I forgot what it was. We paid them some money, but it's because I like Slice and I care about it. But also, it gives me some advantage in talent procurement. So I could like text Melody, I need this, and she would text me back in 4 seconds, 5 options for me. So it does work that way. And the big parks use Slice. The smaller operators use Slice, and then also everybody needs to stop talking about theme park operators to work for. There are all these design firms floating around Orlando and the world, even in Ohio and Cincinnati. They're everywhere. Of course, California. So there's all these other places you could be working. It's not Disney, and it's not Universal, and it's not SeaWorld, and it's not Fun Spot or whatever. Who cares? Whatever it is, it is a huge plethora of job opportunities in firms my size and firms larger than me, like Falcons or AOA or whomever, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's lots of places you can work. So just make sure you're keeping your eyes open. And when you're a freelancer, you can work for multiple companies at the same time. And I call that peak in your peak, right? You're kind of like, and we've been doing that with the freelancers that work for my company, is how can we how can you make more money? How can we give you guys more money? I'm a platinum sponsor. Thank you.
Yay.
You would think I would know these things. I think that all happened right before the world ended, so I kind of lost track of it. But it's something not to be afraid of. It's something you have to consider, and it's actually kind of cool. If you have a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit in you, it's the way to go. And it's fantastic backbone for getting a big full-time job later, and you're going to get exposure to a ton more work than you may have if you just went to go work for a bigger company or a big design firm. So it could actually be very valuable to you. Yeah, I can only speak to like my personal experience. I didn't start working for the theme park operators. I worked for a general contractor around the theme park operators and learned my skills in the field, which I use every single day of my career now. I mean, I literally hauled concrete hoses up to the top of the dirt hill that became the beginning of the Kali River raft ride to carve that tiger rock at the top. And I got to carve some of it. It was really cool because the company at the time let me carve with them, which was kind of cool. But the point is that I worked there, and then I went to work for nonprofit zoos, and I kind of built my skill set and experience level so that when it was time to interview at Universal Creative, which was 10 years after I graduated college, I could. And I could interview for a good job there. And then I also interviewed for a director. I entered the industry as a director level for a lesser operator, SeaWorld, right? A little less it's different than Universal or Disney. So I came in at a higher level and I had a wider breadth of experience, and it paid off in droves. So my path to that big full-time corporate theme park design job didn't include working for them for 10 years. I worked my way around it and then got awesome at what I did and could prove that I could do it and had a portfolio to support it. And then it was just pick where you want to work.
That's great. So I'm going to hand things over to Kelly. She's going to talk. I'm going to throw it over to her right away. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, so obviously we're gonna have lots and lots of questions. One of the main questions is, having been in the industry for as long as you have been, what are some of the differences you see between what we call the Great Recession and this thing right now? And I know that we touched on that last week with Patrick, but you also have the experience. So I'm wondering if you're able to speak to that at all.
Yeah, so the differences are speed. The recession was based around a bunch of different inputs and causes compared to what we're facing today. So the speed of which the recession came was slow. The parks really didn't feel it for probably 4 to 6 months after it really started, because people had already booked their vacations and they could still come, or they had already paid for them. So it was a much gradualer, slower impact to our industry than the flights turning off and cities shutting down overnight. Very different. The difference between the two is the chaos that ensued. And I will only speak about the experiences that my organization had, because they're real, and I actually went through them with my team.
Right.
It was literally, it was like 1 week we're just like, how are we going to get all this work done? And literally the conversation was, we're about to land 3 major projects in addition to the rest of the work we have. Who are we going to hire to help us get all this stuff done? And how do we manage it? At least 6 or 7 days later, the conversation was, okay, guys, how are we going to survive, right? It became a different conversation overnight. And so it was about stress management. It was about trust management, particularly for me and my team, of telling them, like, scary stuff is happening and all your friends are being laid off from work, other companies are closing down, whatever. I said, but here's what I can control and here's what I can tell you. So I approached in a very transparent way, to the point where we're on a text message thread, because, I'm 46, I don't do Slack. We text, but but we were on a text message thread, and I would update them. Like, we would talk every day, and I'd be like, if this I would project out, I think this project's going to cancel. I think this one will cancel. I think this one will go on hold. There's no way these companies are going to do these projects anymore. And I had a pretty good success rate of getting it right, but some held, which was awesome. So we have projects that are in place. And so just being super transparent with everybody, forecasting what was happening became a really important way to keep the trust in my team, because not only was work scary, life was scary. Mm-hmm. And during the recession, life wasn't scary. My life wasn't at risk of getting sick, and my parents weren't at risk of of potentially dying. Now there's like a food issue, a toilet paper issue that nobody understands. And then there's, my world is in chaos. And so how do we make work not chaotic became kind of the key, because I can control that. I can't control it.
So I guess that brings up my next question is, a lot of major corporations have suspended full-time hiring as well as intern programs. And you yourself hire, from different pools. So when do you think, is there any discussion that you've ever heard or that you can share, that companies may start dipping their toe back into the hiring pool again?
So it's a very difficult question, and I don't think it has a date attached to it. And each company is going to be very different. And just so everybody really knows our window into what's happening with our clients, which include large and medium-sized theme park operators, is they're all going through a very chaotic, scary time of not having doors open. End of story. What does that mean, and what does that cause? That's really what's happened. And that includes furloughing or reducing salaries of existing design staff. So I think the first thing you will see as an indicator, and we'll see it early because we have our design friends on the other side aren't working because they've been furloughed or they've had their salaries greatly reduced. But we think we'll hear about that first. We think we'll hear them saying, yeah, we're coming out of furlough, we're ramping back up, things are starting to happen. I have 2 clients currently working around the furlough issue, having us price work that they know they need to get done for Q3, Q4 this year in the event category. So they are starting to work. Like we are just, but it's weird workarounds that we're doing with 2 facilities right now that just, because some people aren't allowed to use email. So we're doing some work through personal email accounts as well because they can't use their company ones, but the work's getting done. So the good news, work is starting to happen again. Number 2, once you start to see those furloughed employees go back, I'm not talking about operations and everybody is key. That will be first actually. And then the design and entertainment will come next is kind of my guess. And if I'm a guessing man, they may not staff all the design teams back up at the levels that you saw before because the projects aren't going to be as voracious immediately. They're not going to one day restart all these projects at the exact same time. So it's going to be a ramp up because they're going to be very worried about their operations and guest safety, and then they'll roll into the design and the project. So it'll be slow. But you'll see the first indicators of it happening, rolling out. Now, my forecast matches one of the Slice board members. Her name is Cindy White. She's brilliant, and she's been a freelancer since there was since the history of time. And she's the mother of it all, and she knows she has a really good finger on it. I agree with her. I think there is actually some interesting runway that didn't exist before the virus that will exist in about a 2 months time frame for the demand for contract workers because they're easier to bring on. They don't require a lot of HR approvals, and they can be and they're limited in their limited exposure. Not exposure, it's the wrong word. Limited risk or cost associated with doing that. So you could see, we think, myself and I believe Slice is in line with me, we do believe that this could become the year of the freelance contractor because the clientele, it's easier to hire somebody for a month than it is to hire somebody for a year from a speed of execution. So that's in the business world. So that could, and the businesses are going to want to hire back their talent, but they might not be able to get everybody back on the boat immediately. Right. So the seats might be filled by people that temporarily hold the seats is kind of the way to think about it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've during my internship at Universal, I because of my role, and I know several other people at different organizations had the same experience. We're actively in there. We're in the meetings. We're producing things that are going to be enjoyed by guests and that are going to be experienced by guests and team members or cast members as well. So one of the things is a lot of those people have recently lost their jobs or they've been furloughed or laid off or, whatever word the industry decides to put on it. They're not working right now. And that's anxiety inducing, not just for the employees, but also for the employers, because, I hope it's my experience that we're cared about. We're not just like some disposable commodity, because it's not accurate. I'm trying to figure out the best way to put it is for the people who are not currently working, what are some ways that, as well as freelancing, that you think we could get back into the industry once things have kind of subsided and leveled off?
Yeah, so my advice is, and I actually had an intern for my company who proved to be outrageously valuable to my organization, and he's now a full-time team member, Nick Pelisic. He started as an intern, a paid internship, and proved to be invaluable to me. And now he has a full-time job at my company. So those paths of travels are valid, and internships are very valid experiences for the people that are having them, and they do contribute to overall projects. So I think not being so number one, don't be afraid to, after graduating, you have to change your expectations. just a touch for a temporary amount of time, and we don't know how long it is, but just change your expectations. I'm going to graduate. Kelly's going to graduate with her badass SCAD arts degree, right? She's going to be completely incredible. And Kelly might need to get another internship, right? And it might only pay, what, 22, I don't know how much internships pay at the big parks. Mine pay $22 an hour, I think, or 25 bucks an hour, or something like that. But you may be getting, you may be doing that again, and that's okay. And because it's number one, you can start to feed yourself. Number two, you can pay your bills, and you're getting work experience. The second thing I would say is also don't be afraid to go work at the front of the line at the parks. I came from the operational background, and every single person that works for me started in the parks, period. When I was at SeaWorld, if you had anywhere on your resume, theme park operator, guest service person, character, actor, whatever, you actually went to the top of my resume pile, above the people that just have awesome academic degrees. So I would encourage you, and I don't think I'm uncommon, because if you've worked in the parks, you understand the guests so much better, which is actually your actual audience you're designing for. So do not be afraid you will get that $12, $13, $10 job at any of the park locations when they start to open back up and they start to hire. It is super valuable work that you can be doing that will also feed you and pay some bills, but you'll get to be in the boots every day. And it's actually very exciting to do that and get to talk to guests and understand why stroller parking needs to be where stroller parking is, those sorts of things. Yeah.
Right. Can we, I'm just looking at some of our questions right now. They're coming in the comments. So Ariel Spencer asks, what would you say about looking into similar style roles in adjacent industries like architecture, which might bounce back more quickly?
Yes. This is the time to hustle, okay? And this is the time to edit your plans, because your plans and your vision you had for what was going to happen when you graduated or soon to graduate is not the same road that it was back in February. That road has changed. It's now gravel. It's not a highway. Right? So don't be afraid to go on a little dirt path and do something differently. We did that with my company. So we pivoted instantly. Because I have the benefit of a nonprofit design backbone behind me. I've done nonprofit event design for about 8 years of my life at Tampa Zoo. So we went back into it. And what we found was an enormous amount of need, which we weren't even thinking about looking at because we had no time. And so we had kind of turned our backs on thinking about that as a workflow, because we only have so much capacity in my organization because we are smaller. So we leaned back into it. We also reached out to healthcare design. There's going to be a lot of healthcare design happening into the future. And what we're finding is that there's a lot of healthcare design build work. So general contractors, Balfour Beatty, PCL, all these big organizations, Wharton Smith, they're doing design build work in healthcare. And those guys need designers. And yes, they need architects, but they actually need experienced designers, because hospitals don't want to look like hospitals any longer. So there's runway there as well. So I think, Ariel, you're on it. Again, I think taking any job that lets you sit at the table and be in the room or be in the park is success. It's about redefining what success means in the near term.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna take this opportunity. Thank you so much. I'm gonna throw it over to Dave, because Dave has some great questions too.
Thanks, Kelly. And actually, that last question that Ariel brought up is a great opportunity to kind of get into. We've kind of talked about, how you see the industry progressing forward, when you see this might be, getting to a close. But let's look more in the short term. I know you mentioned right after this call, they should all go over to the Slice Creative Network and sign up. What's the next step? What are some things that students and recent grads can do now to prepare?
Yeah, so I think importantly is, if you have the time, do some work that's not a school project. We see an endless parade of awesome portfolio books from graduating or soon to be graduating students that are all school projects, which is fine. The problem with all of those is that they tend to be teamwork and work as a collaborative group, which is how real work is done. So they're valid educational experiences. But from a hiring standpoint, it's very hard to pinpoint what exactly the person contributed and didn't contribute. So take this time to stand on your own. And to whatever you do, you draw, you sketch, you make mosaic tile, whatever it is that you do as an artist, go do it and build your book. So you can say things I've done on my own. And I love giving this advice is if you get stuck on what to do, just go redesign someone else's attraction. That is my favorite thing in the world to do at SeaWorld was I actually didn't like what's called greenfield projects, meaning, hey, here's a big blank piece of property, build something for us. I actually like the ones like, hey, we have this really old asset that no one's going into, like the Manatee building at SeaWorld Orlando. And by the way, we just found a bunch of sea turtles. What do you do? And it was the best project ever because we had to remodel an old building. We got to re-script it, repurpose it, and reimagine it. So go through your Rolodex of attractions that you love or places that you think you would do differently that might need a 2.0 version of themselves. Go design that. Go do it. Just go do it and build your book. And that's perfectly valid way to be spending your time. And then to fill the gaps if you aren't currently doing a lot of other things. From a work standpoint of securing new work, which is what everybody wants, I think you're going to have to, number one, Slice is invaluable. Because there's job boards there too as well. Number two, TEA. It's a Themed Entertainment Association. It's a more larger, robust industry group. I am a member of it. Lots of people are members of it. And IAAPA, another very large, and that is the largest industry association that we have. They offer student rates in both of those categories. Go online and go look at all the companies that are there, and that is who you're going to go work for. And
awesome.
They all exist, and you can sort them by design firms. You can sort them by go-kart tracks. You can sort them by pizza suppliers if you want. But that's your clientele list. Those are your employers between all those sites. Slice, IAAPA, TEA. The resources exist. You do not need to Google anything or Chrome anything. You don't need to do anything. Just go there, start reading about them, and then reach out. And when you reach out, don't wait for them to post a job. This has worked for us. We've reached out to our clients and some that we weren't working for. I did it literally yesterday with a very large aquarium that we're doing a project for over here, and we just finished it. And I said, hey, so you guys do a lot of like Halloween and Christmas stuff at the aquarium. Do you need some help? And you know what they said? Yeah, we actually do. So hopefully we're gonna do something for them. So reach out and don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm graduating. I'm willing to do anything. And I'm willing to do it, at whatever rate you can afford to pay. And it might just be a 3-month period of time, but you get the work. So go after it. No one's gonna, the bigger organizations are gonna be harder to get through. Aim at the smaller organizations. They're easy to communicate with. Don't send me a bunch of emails. We can do that, but don't do that. But like other companies like mine that may be a little smaller that might need some unusual help, and you're not afraid to be an assistant or an associate producer or a drawing process CAD manager or a Revit model manager or whatever it may be. Just don't be afraid to reach out. There's nothing shameful about that, and something might hit, and you might be surprised.
Yeah, that actually brings us to one of the questions we got before we started this. Some people reach out to us asking, what is the best way to reach out to those kinds of firms? Obviously it's very important to get to know them and reach out, like you said, to find, where there's opportunity. But what is the best way to approach that?
Yeah, make sure you ask this question to Melody. She's an expert on this, and she has we've got a lot of guiding principles at Slice of how to do this. Yeah. Personally, and I'll speak about how I find new talent. It's through LinkedIn. Sometimes it's through my website. A lot of times it's through LinkedIn, because asking someone to connect with you is a very small burden, right? It's touching a button, connect. And now you're connected. And then you let that sit for a little while. And then you come back and say, thanks for reaching out and connecting. here's some cool stuff I'm working on. I would love to come and help you with anything you may have. And you don't have to grovel and beg, but just like be very open so they know that you're not looking to be the next concept artist of the newest attraction thing. Don't be afraid to do what it takes. So LinkedIn is fantastic for me. That's where I find a lot of talent reaches out to me. And then the coolest thing happened, I don't recommend this because it would cost a lot of money, but people will send me like stuff in the mail. And why that matters is because it's in the mail. And it's not digital, so it's not easily deletable or forgettable or get buried. It comes and it sits on the desk, right? I'd probably wait until offices get back open to do something like that. Do not send anything to someone's house. That's totally creepy, but I wouldn't like that at all. But I've gotten that before. I've gotten books from people. I've gotten work they've done. It's been really interesting. Do not do that to the big theme park operators. They will simply send it back to you because of a bunch of legal ramifications about other people's ideas. But the smaller firms, it's really interesting to think that way. Like, do something unusual to get yourself noticed. I think that could be,
Yeah, definitely. We actually just got a question from the YouTube feed from Teddy. How should recent graduates integrate into the industry and the possibility of the first few months in a new job when the company may have furloughed individuals just a few months earlier?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. Teddy has identified the real reality, and I think there's no good answer for that right now. It is the reality, and it's about taste and timing as well. Because keep in mind, these people had to furlough folks that they adored and cared for. They hired them and they've cultivated their talents, and so these are meaningful experiences that people are having working for any organization of any size that no longer got to work there for no fault of their own. So you're really stepping into a moment in time of high passion and emotion because people love what they do for a living, and then to be told that you don't get to do it anymore is very scary, absolutely scary. So without having a really concise answer for Teddy, I think it's about treading lightly, treading gently, and not representing yourself as a better solution than maybe people that don't have those jobs anymore, but representing yourself as just another option for consideration, and expressing your care and interest. And also think, there's a lot of companies that have furloughed people, but there's a lot of companies that haven't as well. I have not. So I've been very fortunate in that way, and protecting my team in that way. But there's companies that haven't either, and they're mostly in the smaller design firms that are still doing fine. So don't be afraid to reach out to folks that aren't doing that, and that might avoid that awkwardness. But be very honest and true. This is an emotional time, and no organization wants to furlough any employee, and no organization wants to be closed. And this is all at the fault of nobody. So just tread lightly and be cognizant of the moment in time that you're in, and time will heal that. And when things start to open and you start to see furloughed employees coming back, that might be a better time to start those conversations, because now you're not treading on tricky waters. That's probably where I would leave that. Yeah, just give it time for that.
Yeah, and so having been through this kind of period multiple times, what would you suggest? What's a good way for people to keep moving forward in the industry when everything is at a standstill like it is now?
Well, I think you have to also recognize it's okay to not maybe move forward right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think it's going to stress you out. And I'll just keep giving examples, and I'll be very transparent. We're on year 3 of my company. We were having a fantastic time building this organization and doing more work and more volume. We had an awesome Q1. We had this incredible plan for the rest of the year. We're about to book ourselves out for the whole year with a backlog of work with multiple clients. It was fantastic. And then that all had to go away. So I had to take a minute to realize
Yeah, and we are coming to a close here soon. So if you guys have any last minute questions, please comment on our videos. We're going to go to one that Spencer Trimble asked. How have you positioned your company to keep your team safe? So what are some of those, actual things you've done to get through this time?
Number one, we did a couple things. And I have no magic button. We were very fortunate. So number one, and because we had some projects that remained, so we're able to keep working. We're a small company. We do not. We've only been in business for 3 years, so we don't have those big stacks. I don't know, anybody has big stacks of money laying around, but we don't have big reserves or anything, right? But I also run the organization in a very conservative manner as well. So I was prepared for a recession. I was not prepared for a recession and a pandemic. It's kind of what I say. So we could have weathered the recession just fine, because we started recession proofing. I started doing that about a year ago by diversifying my clientele. But the pandemic was something you could never expected. So how do we keep my team safe? We actually, mechanically and safety wise, we actually already have a remote operation. We don't require office hours from our team. We have a studio for collaborative meetings only, and some people like to sit there and meet and whatever, but there's no 9 to 5 check-in in our office. So number one, we were already remote. We did it very early. None of my team, knock on wood, has gotten sick, so we've been very fortunate. So we took care of them that way mechanically. And we function just fine remotely, so it doesn't matter. We're fine doing that. Number two, safe by meaning keeping their jobs. And so the only thing I can do is take the stress and take any anxiety out of do I have a job or do I not have a job with the team. That's the only thing I can control in the situation. And what I do is I take it on a 2-week basis, right? We kind of approach it. We're good for the next 2 weeks. We're good for the next 2 weeks. We're good. Here's what has to happen for us to continue to be great. I know on the back, I know where my July, October is. We're kind of okay in those months. It's the in between that makes me nervous. So communicating honestly, transparently, and clearly with what's happening is how I keep their, not safe necessarily as it is much, keeping their stress low so they can be creators, because we actually have work we got to get done, and I don't need them panicking about all these other things. So I try to remove as many of those panicable things as I can.
Great, awesome. That's exactly what we were looking for. And I appreciate your time. I think I'm going to throw it over to Patrick to say, with a few closing remarks and point us to where we go next. Patrick.
Patrick, you might be on mute.
Hey, I'm back. I worked with Randy at Wild Rivers Water Park when I was like 14 and 15 years old. So he's known me for 20 years. So I hope, Randy, thanks for watching. I think that's super cool. Shout out to you. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today for offering some information. I think that was fantastic. Big shout out to everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. We had a great turnout today. All of you out there in TV land, quick plug, please follow us on Facebook so we don't have to invite you every single time. It's About to Graduate. That you can just type that into Facebook at About to Graduate. It should pop up. And then, of course, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have Melody from the Slice Crave Network. We've known Melody for a very long time. She is fantastic. She was chiming in earlier, so we're super excited about that. Write it down now. Friday, May 1st, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. So with all of that, folks, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time in about 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thanks, Brian.
Bye, guys.